My name is Leanne, and I'm a 28-year-old woman who works as a story listener. It's a peculiar job that allows me to hear people's deepest fears and secrets. But it's also a creepy one. Nonetheless, it's fascinating to me. Recently, I've heard some incredible near-death experience stories that have left me both frightened and in awe. I'd like to share a couple of these stories with you, so you can see what it's like to be a story listener. It was midnight, and I was on a 2-hour bus ride home. There were 4 passengers, including me. Among the other passengers were a 20-year-old boy, a middle-aged man in a suit, and a soldier around my age. As we rode the bus, the young boy struck up a conversation with me. We talked for a while and discovered that we would both be on the bus for at least 2 hours. He suggested that he share his near-death experience with me, saying that it was the perfect time for a scary story since it was midnight and we had nothing else to do on the bus. I agreed, and the soldier, who overheard us talking, also offered to share his own near-death experience story. We sat together and started chatting, with the middle-aged man quietly listening in. The young boy started his story, explaining that he was an extreme sport athlete who did all kinds of dangerous activities, like rock climbing, skateboarding, and surfing. One time, he and his friend went mountain biking along a treacherous ridge that was at least 3 stories high on either side. As they were riding fast and having fun, a strong wind suddenly blew on them. They managed to steady their bikes, but then a big rock beneath the boy's tire slid, and he fell off the ridge. Luckily, he quickly grabbed onto a tree growing on the side of the ridge. His friends tried to help him up, but he was too far down, and they couldn't reach him. They called for help, and the boy held on to the tree for at least 2 hours, almost using up all his strength. Just as he was about to let go, a helicopter arrived. The rescuer reached out his hand and pulled him aboard the helicopter. After the boy finished his story, we all agreed that it was a scary experience. Next, the soldier began sharing his story. He recounted how he was serving in a war zone 5 years ago. In his very first mission, he and his comrades were crossing a field. Suddenly, they heard the sound of gunfire. The soldier and his comrades quickly lay down to dodge the bullets, but then a loud explosion rang out. It was clear that a grenade had landed dangerously close to him. The soldier lay face down on the ground, covering his ears with his hands. Even though he was facing down, he could feel the air thick with smoke and dust. This was his first mission, and the sounds made him feel incredibly scared. He heard some of his comrades get up and start shooting back, but he was so frightened that he just stayed down and continued to cover his ears. After about 15 minutes, the gunshots stopped, and he heard someone calling his name. He lifted his head and saw his good friend reaching out to him, offering a hand up. His friend informed him that the enemies had retreated. After the soldier finished his story, we all agreed that it was a truly harrowing near-death experience. I could only imagine how difficult it must have been to stay focused in such a dangerous situation, especially for someone who was new to war zones. Suddenly, the middle-aged man moved to the seat next to us, clearly intrigued by the first 2 stories. He leaned in and began to share his own tale. He recounted a time when he had just finished work and was waiting on the subway platform to head home. Suddenly, a man brandishing a knife appeared and began to threaten the other commuters. Panic ensued as people screamed and backed away from the assailant. Suddenly, a brave bystander lunged forward in an attempt to disarm the attacker. Two others joined the fray, wrestling with the man as chaos erupted around them. Seeing his opportunity, the middle-aged man leapt onto the attacker's back in an attempt to subdue him. But the man was too strong, and he violently shook his body until the middle-aged man was thrown off and onto the subway tracks. Terrified onlookers watched as a train approached, but a quick-thinking commuter reached out a hand and pulled the middle-aged man to safety just in time. We were all shocked when the middle-aged man finished his story, and the bus soon arrived at our destination. As the three passengers got off the bus, the driver turned to me and commended me for my good work before bidding me farewell and wishing me a good day. Dear listeners, I am a story listener. I listen to the stories told by the spirits of the deceased. Yes, the young boy, soldier, and middle-aged man were all deceased. The young boy fell off a mountain ridge, the soldier was killed by a grenade that landed close to him, and the middle-aged man was hit by a train. The deceased never knew they were dead. They always believed they were saved in the last second. My job is to listen to their stories, which they believed happened, but in reality, did not. The bus was meant to take them wherever they needed to go in the afterlife. I wish them a good afterlife.